All right, so this is the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson, 1776. Starting off with the introduction. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So right here, it tells you why they are declaring independence this way. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires they should declare the causes. So they care not so much about King George as they do about the reaction of the rest of the world, that the rest of the world should understand their reasons. So right there, they tell us that this is going to be a listing of the causes which impel the separation, right? Which impel their war for independence from Britain. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So they are establishing what they believe government should be. That wherever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So we see them laying out the priorities, what they believe government should be, and they're going to be listing their reasons for the separation. Though they're not yet. They're speaking in general about the responsibilities of government. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. So there's kind of an implied counterclaim where they are responding to possible concerns that might be brought up by their opposition. Right? Well, if you're just going to change your government, you could change it every day. What's that going to leave us with? Well, no, it shouldn't be changed for light and transient reasons. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So right there, he's implying, hey, if most people will suffer as long as it is sufferable before they start to fight, that is implying that what they are suffering is no longer sufferable. It has gotten so bad that they can no longer suffer what they have been. So that's indicating the importance that they should rebel. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. This idea of necessity, right? This is a motif that is being developed throughout. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And that's something that indicates that we're going to be shifting away from pathos kind of into logos. They are going to be submitting facts to the candid world. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Hey, he is a tyrant. the shade. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of people. Some key diction that he keeps pulling in throughout. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. So a lot of language with really negative connotations throughout all of this. The things that he's doing are really negative and awful. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriation of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in time of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislature. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdictions foreign of our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. And then we see a shift where the parallelism here is changing a little bit for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is a pretty, there's 9 of these in addition to the 14 prior. And then looking again at that beginning anaphora, right? We have another, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of the he hases. And then we have a nice little shift here. There's going to be a tense shift, so I would pay attention to that. That's probably important. From the past to the present. But this is a really long laundry list. So we have a total of 18 he hases, a total of 9 for doing this, for doing this, for doing thises. That's a really long laundry list of offenses, and these are all of the things, right? This is them listing their evidence, right? The logos, right? These are the facts being submitted to the candid world. These are the facts that they want the rest of the world to know and understand about their reasons why. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. Key diction throughout this. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their colony, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rules of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. How dare he? Right, he's employing the savages against us, and I don't agree with this characterization of the Native Americans, but just understand that was the characterization that existed in the time. Moving on. Whoops. In every stage of these oppressions, we have a shifting anaphora. We have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered with only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. So he might be speaking in generalizations about a prince, but who is he actually talking about? Our good old friend, King George III, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. So he shifts from that long laundry list of all the things that King George has done into what they have done, right? That they have tried to resolve the issue, but they have been unsuccessful because of the responses that they have gotten. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies. So right here, when it's talking about what authority they have and who they are, that is actually an appeal to ethos. All right, they are specifically talking about or listing their credentials. We are the representatives of. This is why we have the right to make this declaration. Solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all the other acts and things which independent states may of right do. Right? This is everything that they can do now that they have declared independence. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. So again, this idea that God is on their side. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.